Welcome back to the Raven Podcast. Listen, it's John here. Today it's a special one because once in a while, what we do, me and Jason, is we give each other a subject that the other one doesn't know, and it's kind of a surprise. So today, I brought up a subject to Jason is what is a man? And it's not related to whatever's going on in the trans community and whatnot. It is what is a man role, what is a man doing in society, and so on and so forth. And it's personal opinion. There's nothing, registered or nothing said here. It's our view on things. You are allowed to disagree. This is the fun part. We're chatting about things. So, subscribe, like, share, do the thumbs up thingy. Thank you for being with us. Stay tuned. It's coming up right now.
Recording started.
Ooh, and we're back with the Ravens Chronicles. So last time we did a one-on-one.
Are we back or are we front?
What do you
Or
mean?
are we forward? Well, everybody says we're back. What do you mean you're back? Are you this way? Ah, that's bad.
Well, so we're back because we took a walk
don't know.
away and we
I don't know.
grounded.
I'm trying to make a really awful joke and it did not work at all. So
That's perfect for Friday.
we're back. We're back.
That joke's Friday.
Yeah, bad. No, more like bad joke Monday. Terrible joke Monday. But yeah, we're back. We're back. And it's just me and you.
Yeah, well, and it's different. It's good because I think we've been talking for I don't even know what time it is now. Well, we've been talking already for 25 minutes, so why not starting to record it? Because
why not?
We might skip some stuff. In the past, you brought up a subject where we would develop, and I had no clue about it. And I'm not gonna. I'm gonna bring a subject that is kind of touchy in actuality, and like what's going on right now in the world.
Yep.
We're gonna touch the war and so on because I think we can speak about that for a while. But something that seems to have changed immensely, something that standards has changed as well for many reasons. But a question I have for you, and just because defining it is always interesting, what is a man?
Yeah, that
Right?
Oh boy. So I just so for everybody who's listening, John just punched me in the virtual face with that because I was not prepared. He just told me the subject without me knowing. So this will be fun. What is a man? Yeah, that's a good one.
Mhm.
So okay, you want me to start it off?
Well, we're gonna swing it, right? Because
Yeah.
I think there's a various thing, but two things of what a male is, right? Or what is taught at home in or family or life, but you're taught to be either a man or you can be also to be taught to be a dad. And a father figure is totally different than a man.
Yep.
Those don't wear the same hat. So let's start with one. What is a man?
Sure.
And then there's a lot of branch that I want to discover and talk about because
Yeah, this is gonna go everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What is a man? If I was to be asked that, it would depend on if I was going to come at it from a psychological or a biological place. But I think it's pretty simple for about 98% of the world. A man is the masculine equation of the binary system that human beings operate in.
Okay.
A man has specific chromosomes and markers in his genetics in his DNA, and a man biologically has the genitalia of a male, which is testes and a penis. So I don't know how there's any other distinction. And I know where we're going on this because you just have to turn the TV on or watch anything social media, and we know exactly what the problem is, right? Right now, what's happening is nobody can define what a man or a woman is. And so we've got this really messy state of affairs going on all over the world where we're trying to expand the borders of what a man is or what a woman is. For me,
actually, you know what? I
this
don't
is
want
what a man.
Let's not go there yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, then,
so
then we're talking like the psychological part of what is a man. A man is a protector. A man is a guardian. A man has masculine traits which help to define things like strength, aggression, leadership, dominance, power, but also in a man there is, or there should be, things like compassion and empathy and grace and altruism. So if you wanted to define a man that way, I think those words, and if you know what those words mean, those words speak to what a man is.
Mhm.
A man is the masculine half of an equation, and masculinity is sort of those words I just defined. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then there's like sort of like the what I was talking about or getting at, which is like don't downstream, which is sort of the social media politically correct spirit of the time. What is a man definition that we're all, well, not me and you, because we don't need to fight about this. I know what I'm a man, and you know that you're a man, right?
Yep. But
Yeah.
and it's not the social media. I really don't care right now about it. It's not the thing that I'm concerned about. I don't want to get into the trans world of the thing. This is not what I'm interested into.
Yep.
What I'm interested is how did it change? And we're gonna stay with the X and Y
Yep.
chromosome aspect, because boys, right from I mean, you and I are in the same generation technically. Well, no, because you're Gen X. I'm Gen Z. I'm millionaire. I'm millionaire.
I'm right. I was right on. I'm a 1980 boy, so I'm right on the cusp. Some say
Okay.
79 is the cutoff. Some say it's early 80s. I don't know.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're two different generation, but I think we've been raised kind of in a similar thing,
Yep.
in different concept. Okay. Um, you didn't have a dad right away when your dad left, right?
Yes.
So obviously, there's parts that are different that you had to develop yourself, without that image, or finding an image itself, right? Like,
Yeah.
who
Well,
can
so
I?
yeah, it's funny you say that because you had a male role model growing up. You had a
Yep.
father all your life, right?
Yeah.
I didn't. My mother was the only one in the household until I was 18. So I didn't have somebody to teach me what it was to be a man. And then you also talked about being a father, and that's a totally different category altogether. You can be a man, but being a father and being a man are two different things, because a man could be childless for his entire life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I lacked the role model to teach me how to be a man and how to be a father, because I didn't have a father around that I would emulate now. However, I had a granddad, and he did a pretty darn good job of showing me what a man was. And so I got to watch him. And what I watched, and this kind of goes into my definition of what a man is. I watched him be the breadwinner of the family, be the protector of his wife. Um, he was stoic. He never spoke ill about people. He always went to work no matter what was going on. I never found times where I can remember like when I go back and think on my memory of him, I don't ever remember him complaining. And he had, like anybody, he had all kinds of problems. He had a really bad back. He had torn his shoulder. Eventually, he was a millwright, journeyman millwright for his entire career, 39 years in the paper mill here in Fort Francis. He barely missed a day of work. So
Yep.
he was like that prototypical 20th century grinded out, hardworking, post-depression baby man.
A
And that's
man.
what yeah, a man. You know, the basic virtuous man. He was a good, kind-hearted, strong man. And
Accountable, integrity, like those things.
he had them all. And
Mhm.
he didn't raise me, and he wasn't there all the time because he was working. He worked full time. I was born, and my mother was so young that my granddad was 41 when I was born.
Oh,
My
wow.
grandmother was 36. So they were very young growing up. So in his 50s, when he was in the prime of his life, I would have been in my teens. And I got to follow him in the summertime when we would go fishing and camping, and he would take me hunting, and I would have sleepovers and I would hang out with him. But those were only a few days of the year. Otherwise, as I was growing until I was a man myself, I was kind of defining myself as a man based on all external forces and external observations that I saw.
Mhm.
And probably if you tell your story now, you can say what you saw as you developed from your father, because
Mhm.
it would be totally different than me.
It is, and it is so interesting, right? So, um, like I said in the previous podcast, my father is a psychologist, psychosociologist. Um, so he is a man, right?
Yep.
He had that manliness, um, but it was nothing that was. I mean, when I met my wife's father, who's a handyman, he can fix freaking everything,
Yeah.
right? Where he taught me how to change my tires, change my brakes, change my, oil, name it, transmission, or like every liquid on the car possible. He taught me. Um, and my dad, as of today, is still not. It's all contractors that do it. So versus here now, I do those things. But my father is someone who obviously it's kind of the same way, right? Respect a woman, and so on and so forth. And he worked like until he burnt out. My dad burnt out in 1994, where um, interestingly enough, my dad had a depression, a burnout, and um, compassion fatigue. He was working in a jail where kids kill their parents or family members,
Yeah.
and uh, he was hiding in his bed for like a year and a half, year give or take, and the guilt that was felt. I mean, I was 9 years old at that time. I could feel the guilt of my father being at home. That was not okay for a man to do so. He still pushed himself to, bring us to camping every year and so on and so forth. But my dad would hide in the trunk of the minivan we had because he couldn't sustain family people around, right? The crowds and so on. So he would
Yeah.
still go. And I think this is also what a man is at some part is sacrifice.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
it's a form of sacrifice, but in a different stage because mother does it too, right?
yeah, but you're touching on something that's important, and there's a distinction there. When a man has a duty to perform, and I mean this in a very serious way.
Mhm.
When a man has a duty to perform, there are times where a man is going to have to swallow down his pain and do anyways.
Mhm.
And you and I are both servicemen, so we know what that's like because you and I have both also struggled with PTSD from
Yep.
serving, and we don't need to go down that road. Everybody's heard that 1,000 times already.
Yeah.
But and I know, I can look back on it. When I went to work, and I didn't miss a whole lot of work. When I was not off, straight off taking therapy, I would I would go to work completely ill,
Yep.
very mentally unwell. But I had a duty, and when the duty was there, I swallowed down my pain and I did my job, and nobody would have known, you know.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, that's important. That is what a man should do. When his duty calls, it's more important than him. It's more
Mhm.
important than his pride and his safety. And so he should go and do. And I think that's an important distinction that's when a man has a duty.
Yep.
When a man is off duty and he's feeling these things, a man should be vulnerable and express himself and speak. And you're talking about how your dad ended up with compassion fatigue after being a psychologist for X amount of years. Of course, because I bet you he never spoke.
Yep.
I bet you he never did
Actually, no,
anything.
no. Let me fix this one.
Okay, well,
My
I mean,
dad.
yeah, see, I'm
Yeah.
assuming. So here you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, finish the
So,
story
so
for me.
yeah, as a psychologist, my dad every 2 weeks would meet a psychologist as well to dump his baggage.
Yep.
Because he was doing the jail on the weekend, and during the week he was running his own community service where he helped men who beat up their kids and wife.
Mm.
Uh, so it was
Sort
always
of
with
like a PARS
violence.
program or something? Like a
No, no, it
partner
was
program?
it's the first community organization in Canada
Yep.
that actually are just focused on helping male who has tendency to be violent, domestic
Okay.
violence.
Yeah.
And it was one-on-one or groups, and they were referred at, and let's say if they went to jail for having beating up their spouse, kids, whatnot. If they are released, they have to attend next amount of session there and whatsoever.
Yep.
So I've heard stories since I'm a kid, right? But the one thing that I remember my father telling me as a kid, as a teenager, is I did a mistake, son. I thought you ought to be a father, but not a man.
Yep.
Because, and there was a study done actually in Quebec about that, where 66% of the males all know how to be a father, but they are man-child,
Right.
right? And there's a huge difference between, again, I have to push it, man and father,
Yeah.
right?
Big time.
When where you're talking about, always showing up and so on and so forth, and putting the family first and so on and so forth. This is a father,
Hmm.
right? Now a man is a different profile. And I guess
Yep.
this is what I was talking about earlier, that I want to look into it with you. What is the difference? What
Yeah.
is the difference in between the two? And this is why I'm talking. It's not even related to the trans aspect. It's not related to whatever social media they're talking about. Because yesterday I've heard a comparison between alpha male and masculine male, which is different,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Alpha
I
male
saw
is in
that. I saw
front.
that clip. I think you shared that clip with me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I found that very interesting because the male was saying, actually, it's the spouse who
Yeah.
was saying to her spouse, "Don't you see all those alpha male that are running after me and so on?" And he's like, "It's okay. It's okay. I'm not an alpha male. I'm not competitive to them.
Yep.
I'm not in competition to them." And there was a part that I find actually very interesting because in it, what she was explaining is this man understood his position, his personality, and what he brings to the table, and he understood that he was not an alpha, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a beta. There's nothing wrong with being a sigma. That's all good if you know your position. And he's like, we're here as masculine men to take care of the family, of their spouse, and we're the person who stays
Yep.
despite anything. Versus the alpha male, who's always seeking,
Seeking, chasing. Yeah.
chasing, and upfront.
Almost wolf-like, you know?
Yeah, a
Yeah.
leader, right? The alpha
Yeah.
male is the alpha wolf, right? Versus the wolf who actually has a duty to do within the pack. That's
Right.
different, right?
Yep.
So in the male aspect, there are various different degrees in it too. Where you have the alpha, you have the beta, and what they started to use since the 90s, the sigma,
Mm-hmm.
which is a very different type of person, which I love to look into it because I kind of started to study to read about personality, because more you know about yourself, more you can go further, right? You know
Yep.
your power, and therefore you can grow within.
Yeah.
So within this, when I was looking into it, I was like, okay, I'm not an alpha. Never been that guy has the need to lead. Um, and I have millions of good ideas, but I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
Because I've seen them. I've been led by some. I've been led by manager as well, but that's another conversation. But the Sigma can be a leader, or he can be a follower, or he can be on his own, and he doesn't give a fuck.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. You hear a lot of this. It's funny because that seems to be one of the things that men are striving for now, right? It used to be that men wanted to be the alpha male.
Yep.
And then once this idea that there's another category of male, which is this, I think it's even more alluring to men now, this sigma male thing, this guy that is indifferent to leadership, fails or refuse to ever follow anybody's rules if he so chooses. Um, he's the guy in the back corner who's watching, and he attracts things to him instead of going out and seeking and chasing them, right? Like you said, the sigma versus the alpha male, and I'm no expert in this. Maybe we should have disclaimed that at the beginning again, but we're just talking, man. As far as what I understand, it seems to be one of the main categorical differences between the alpha and the sigma. The alpha male, like you said, is constantly chasing and seeking and providing an air of leadership, whereas the sigma male is in the shadows just watching everybody. He's observing and learning and paying attention. He doesn't have to put his input in, doesn't have to have his 2 cents shared. He knows who he is, he knows his position, and he's satisfied with that without anybody polishing his brass, without anybody telling him, "Oh, look at you, man, you're a leader." He doesn't care. He doesn't need that approval, right? He knows himself to be a true masculine man. And when you know that clip where the woman is talking about her husband is saying, "I'm not an alpha man, I'm just a masculine man." I think maybe that's what a sigma male, if you wanted to use the term, I don't even know if that's a clinical term. I think maybe that's just a societal term or a
Maybe.
social term. That may be what it is. That may be that the sigma male defines himself simply as a masculine man, and he knows, he's confident, and he's aware of his role or of his duty. It's funny.
Yeah.
So remember when we were first talking about the things that we would talk on the podcast, I was talking about I want to do this thing about the overman.
No,
So
I don't remember.
yeah, okay. So there's a book right here called, it's Friedrich Nietzsche.
Okay.
and it's a book called "Thus Spoke Zarathustra." And
Okay.
Nietzsche, he brings out this. I haven't read the book yet, and I'm going to, and I only know basically the Cole's notes. But the
Okay.
Overman, or the Übermensch, which I believe is the German term, is the idea that there is an evolution in man beyond what we are right now, and it's the he calls man the tether between animal and the Overman. And what we are trying to achieve is this Overman, and it's this man who is completely indifferent to the pressures of society. He is fully aware of his duties, and he doesn't need any external um
Input.
sorry, so got the dogs freaking out in the back. Yeah, he doesn't need any external input to prove who he is. I
Okay.
kind of like that idea.
It's good. It's fantastic. I think there is and this is a question I have to look into, I guess, or we have to maybe discuss is let's say it came in the 90s, right? In the 90s, it's when obviously internet started to come out with
Yep.
the Pentium 486 or the Apple Mac, whatever, the with colored big bucks, right? I remember those computers.
Mhm.
But there's the mass didn't have to follow anymore. We used to follow the newspaper or the news on TV or whatever they say on the radio.
Yep.
But now you had everything on top of your fingers within a second.
Yep.
So where is your pack? So did the Sigma male exist now because of that? I guess, well, I mean, it could be. The one thing that and what you were talking about, and the big difference is what they fuel off, right? An alpha male will fuel off the lead, right? So fuel off the people who leads that he leads, right? So
Yeah.
they have to convince people, right? In the chase, there's a convincing of I'm that's the right decision.
Like I'm the leader,
And
and you feel like you want the followers.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you're fueled by that. You're fueled by leading people. You're fueled
Mhm.
by having more and more people who support or follow you or your lead or whatever that is. And again, leading is a different term for whoever who.
Also, it's not a bad thing. This is a perfectly good thing to be if you're
Oh
good.
yeah,
As
yeah.
long as you're not a narcissistic asshole, pardon my language, there's nothing wrong with being an alpha male. In fact, I think we need way more alpha males. We need more
Oh yeah.
leaders. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because right now we're finding ourselves where in this world we didn't have to in this, I think, few decades that we have recent, right? That massively changed in the last 20 years. Because I mean, you remember the 80s, it was
Mhm.
totally different, or the 90s even. And now you're looking at everything is being switched for. I remember when they started to use the politically correct. I was like, well, what is this? Like, what are we talking about? Like, you're saying we cannot say, I don't know, gay, right? Because it was used in the 90s as you're an idiot, right? But gay means happy as well. Doesn't mean just homosexual, right? And
Yeah.
there's kind of variation where we cannot use the words and so on. And now we're at the point where we cancel comics, stand-up comedian, um, and and humor is not defined by one person,
Yep.
right? And I think if we would have more actual alpha male, because I don't think that a narcissistic asshole is an alpha male. I think it's a narcissistic asshole. You know what I mean? Like, who would follow a narcissistic asshole?
Well, it depends how good of a narcissist they are.
True.
Because yeah, there are men that I know, that I've met, who come off as being an alpha type person. But
Yep.
the reality is, if you're not careful with them and if you don't pay attention, that they're not necessarily the alpha male that everybody wants. They're narcissistic. And so what narcissists do, I think, is they are really good at pretending, right? They actually lack the qualities of an alpha male, but they
Okay.
pretend to emulate them for popularity's sake, and they use people in order to appear alpha in some way, but they're actually completely lacking in compassion and altruism.
Yep.
Great leaders don't step on their followers. Great leaders stand side by side with the people that follow them. Whereas the male who is a narcissist will use his followers to gain control and power and strength and to bolster himself and make himself feel good. And I know examples of that. They're in every police station, they're in every military unit, they're in every
Right.
fire department, they're in every hospital. They're everywhere. Not a
Yep.
whole lot of them. There's only a few here and there, but they're there. And they come off as alpha, but truly I don't think that they can carry that real term. And if the real term of an alpha male, is one of bravado and strength and chest beating, that's not alpha male to me. That's asshole to me.
Okay.
The true alpha male, for me, the true leader is the altruistic leader. The one who is confident when he walks into a room, he's got the room, right?
Yep.
He kind of turns heads. But at the same time, he's not stabbing people in the back. He's the kind of guy that knows he's a leader. He walks into the room, he's willing to shake hands with the lowly person. He
Yep.
doesn't roll his eyes in disgust at the homeless person. He shows his power through compassion and empathy and grace. And so he doesn't have to prove himself. But he also, at the same time, he probably thrives on feeling like an alpha male. Like you said, he wants those followers.
Yep.
He wants to be surrounded by people that see him. However, it's in check, right? Like his ego is in check. Maybe that's the sort of the defining thing between an alpha and a narcissist is the alpha is maybe enjoying the feeling of being an alpha.
Yep.
But keeps his ego wrapped up and doesn't let that spill out into the team. Whereas the narcissist, I mean, you can just hang out with one for 10 minutes and you want to leave the room, right?
Yeah.
Even though they might take the room, because I've watched the narcissist walk into the room and they suck the wind and the life out of it, and everybody, all eyes are on them. It's the same thing. It's just that they do it with a different sense. They do it with different tools.
Mhm.
I think
Y-
that defining factor is the ego.
Yeah. I have a good example that I remember. All right. I don't know what happened. Sorry.
Didn't shut off his
Uh,
sound.
my
Oh, geez.
no,
What are
actually,
we on? We're like on episode 14 and we're already screwing up.
yeah. Jesus.
Come on,
So
John. Come on, man. I'm just kidding.
I love you.
Okay.
Um,
I love you too.
so
Tell me your story.
uh, so when I look at it, and I remember being in the special force, right? And we would have our men's breakfast, and they call it the men's breakfast, although there's women in it.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter. That's all. It's always been called. It goes that way. And men's breakfast is when our supervisor and the CEO and so on serve us, breakfast, and that's kind of thank you for your hard work. And this is also the morning where we're gonna give you the updates of what's going on, like the admin status of things that's gonna happen or promotion or whatever that is.
Yeah.
I would always remember the RSM, right, which is regimental sergeant major. And he's the old kind, where you see his hands, and I mean, no word of a lie, they were like humongous, like bear paws, right?
Yep.
So the physical of that alpha male was there. Number one. Number two. Now you have to think, right, that those male are most of them are all alpha or in that category, if you wish, different level again in that unit. There's a lot of them, right? It's kind of a competition that constantly goes. But when he would say, shut up, the 1,000 people sitting in that room, and he wouldn't take the mic, he would scream it. So you have 1,000 guys per se who just shut the fuck up right there.
Yep.
And it would be over. It would be done. And then I remember going to the police service, and we had a sergeant major because they wanted to be similar to the military, if you wish, and he tried in a class of 30 person to make us stop talking, and it did not work, right?
Yep.
So there's something, and it's not that he was a bad person, but the alpha, the presence, speak for itself.
I think
Yeah.
I think it doesn't speak for itself, John, and you'll agree with this because you say it all the time. It speaks because people have seen him in action.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can see this in the difference again between the narcissist and the alpha. There you go. You're clear. You got all fuzzy for a second.
Yeah.
So here's what I mean. In my line of work as a policeman, the greatest leaders were not great leaders because they stood on a pulpit and told you what to do in some beautiful way. It's not like they were singing poetry to you, so you wanted to go out and do what they did, what they said. The best supervisors I had showed up at calls and said, "What do I need to do for you so you could take the lead investigation? What can I take off your plate so you can take this major crime?"
Yeah.
And then in the background, and people don't know how the computer system works, but in the background, some of the best sergeants would be in the background taking care of their team's menial work so they could focus on big tasks.
Yeah.
They never asked. We never told our supervisors to do this for them, these good ones. They just did. It was their actions that spoke louder that they were a leader, that they were an alpha. Whereas the narcissist will talk your ear off and they'll tell you how amazing they are, but they have no resume to prove the words they say. All they are is talk. And that's the big difference. It's the deeds, not words thing, right? And so I think that's a big distinction between the alpha and the narcissist. The people, the difference between somebody who's a true leader and somebody who's attempting to prove he's something. And I don't know. I don't know if these people that have these narcissistic tendencies are masking something. They're afraid. They actually lack true confidence. So they, in a sort of a bullyish way, they come off as powerful because it makes them feel like something. It's probably a combination of those things. I'm no psychologist, but
there's also mental health to it, right? Like BPD, so borderline personality disorder. When you look at it, there's a lot of traits in it that are narcissistic, right?
Yeah.
And it all depends how you've been raised with it, right? Because I have BPD, man. I have, and I don't take him as narcissistic, right? To the point that just recently I had to explain every donation that I do with wire differently, because there were rumors where I do totally opposite. I cash all profit because I don't talk about it, as an example, right? So there's traits that fits, but I could say the same thing with traits with ADHD, where it fits PTSD, right? It's all on the mental health realm. And I believe, and that's another thing. And some people have the belief that you're born an alpha, right? And there's some people who have the belief that you can become one. I do strongly believe that is something you can become. Yes, but it's the same as you have facility. You have if you are good at playing basketball and you're 6'5", 6'9", well, there's good chance that if you put a lot of energy, you might get in two teams, right? Like it's how it works. But I strongly believe as well that there's basketball players who are 5'9". They might have to work 6 times more, 10 times more, 20 times more than the regular person with all the affinity to play it.
Yep.
But will beat them up because they work so hard to it.
Well, yeah, that's a difference between talent and dedication, I suppose, is what you're saying. And I wonder if there's too many characteristics that people are born with too. I don't know how you could ever say that somebody is born that way specifically. Maybe they would have natural inborn talent to be charismatic and lack the shame to speak publicly, because that's one of the characteristics of an alpha. They don't seem to be afraid of speaking publicly, of standing before their team or a group and saying, this is what I think we should do. They're not afraid to forge a path for everybody and ask the team if they think this is the way. Could you be a quote low level man and rise to the level of alpha or sigma because you want to? Yeah, sure. And I think also there's a spectrum, right? We're talking about what is a man. I don't know, man. I don't know really. Well, yeah, I do know in a certain way, but there's a spectrum and I can't speak to all of it. I think that you can probably hit, if like, let's say there was a checklist of 100 things that make a man. How many do you need before you're actually a man? I don't know, 70, 80?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is, but I know that I'm a man. And here's why I know that I'm a man. If somebody showed up on my farm property with a gun and was going to come into my house,
Yep.
I'm the one that's going to be taking the bullets.
Yep.
It isn't going to be my wife or children.
Yep.
If I'm out with my family and an attacker wants to rob us, I will literally throw my wife out of the way to be stabbed.
Yep. Yep.
I could go on and on with examples.
Yep.
I am the protector of my home. I am the one
That's
that's willing to.
from Batman, right? I'm a protector. No?
Where's the trigger?
That's the college humor too, right?
Yeah, no. Well, that's getting a little dirty, buddy. But seriously, in all seriousness, and I have enough confidence to know that I am a solid protector.
Yeah.
I have it in me to do it. And I don't fear having to do that for my family. And I will gladly lay my life down for my family.
Yeah.
So
It's
I don't
not a
know
question.
I don't know what boxes that check off. I don't care because I know that for my family, I'm the man.
Yeah.
That takes nothing away from my wife. It's just this is my role. Okay.
Mhm.
And I think that defines a man as a man.
Now I want to make it clear there's alpha women. We're just not talking about it.
Oh,
Like,
I know because I'm married to one. Trust me.
Yeah.
I hope she's still behind me listening, but because she'll know. I'll get the slap later. But I love my wife, and she's a dear sweetheart. But she's got a real strong personality, and she'd probably try to fight me to get in front of the gunman. She wouldn't win that fight because I kicked the shit out of my wife. I'm just way stronger than her. But anyways, she's that kind of gal. And so there's nothing wrong with that. We do butt heads on this because we both have strong character personalities. But you're right. There's women who are alpha women too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's sigma, beta, and whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
This is the difference between this is in the male perspective, and there's a female aspect, and then we're talking about father and mother. Those are different things, right? They're two different aspects, and we bring different things as well as parents, because that's another thing, right? Like we go. Same thing as what you're talking about, someone who break into the house, but I'll give you the example with I'm going hiking with my son, and he's been hearing that there's bears because we had I think 3 attacks of grizzly bear this summer. And he's like, what do we do? And I'm like, that's easy. Where's the car? And he's like, I follow the path that way. I'm like, okay, so you fucking run.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, I'm gonna dance, because I'm not gonna say at 5 years old that he's gonna be shredded apart, because that's gonna be happening, right? Like,
Yeah.
But the truth is you survive. That's the goal.
Yep.
That's all that matters. And again, like you can be a man being an accountant. It doesn't change anything, right? Like it's not a job. It's a personality. It's person traits that you have, like you said.
Yeah.
And it's important to say because there's no bad jobs. I strongly believe that you have alpha in accountant. You have alpha in garbage man or garbage woman, or whatever that is. It's not it. It's a type of personality that comes with that you develop with years and so on. Now, I do believe you can be very fatherly and not have kids, right?
Sure.
Because you can be motherly without having kids as well, right? There's there's aunts, right? There's aunts who can be actually like extremely motherly towards their nieces and nephews.
Yep. Well, I had an uncle growing up. Him and my aunt ended up divorcing, but he was very much like a father figure to me in certain ways. He took me fishing all the time. He taught me a lot about carpentry. He employed me with his carpentry business. So he was a fatherly figure in that way. So yeah, he wasn't my father, but he was still, and he had daughters. So it was totally different for him. My cousins growing up were a handful in their own way. He didn't have his own sons, but he fathered me like a son, even though I was his nephew. So you're right, yeah. And I have friends who don't have children who are just uncles, where their siblings have kids, and they're fantastic uncles.
Yeah.
And in a way, they are sort of assuming a fatherly role for those children. They're teaching those children the ways of a good man, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that distinction. We're servicemen. And so many people that get into this space, when they hear servicemen and servicewomen talk, think, oh, look at you arrogant people thinking that you just know everything because you did these jobs that are very unique and they have a lot of physical and mental challenges. That's absolutely categorically false in my head.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you made that distinction, because you could have a pretty badass accountant out there who's going to take a bullet for his family. You're right. It's up here.
Yeah.
Right. It's up here. I like to think of it in a much deeper sense too. Look at it in the animal kingdom. Look at that men, all the males, almost all the males in the animal kingdom are larger, and they're the ones that do the fighting.
Mm-hmm.
It's just biologically in us to be the protector.
Yeah. But there's a difference, right, in that aspect when you talk about animals, because the first thing that I'm thinking of is if an elephant, and I'm going to just put myself in the skin of an elephant, right, by all means, because they can be extremely, they can destroy a lot of things. They can be, I mean, they're the biggest animal. So, but if an elephant sees a lion, what does it think of? Run. What the lion thinks about the elephant, lunch. Right. And that's where as well the big category that is different, right? Where the elephant might be the number one in the family itself, right? And will sacrifice himself for the family, which is whatever that is. But the difference with the alpha is I'm gonna win. I'm gonna take
and so if you're a bull elephant, and you're the lead of the pack, would you not have that mentality? You'd look at a lion and be like,
so the bull elephant, which is very, very interesting why you say this, because there's a bull elephant and there's a bull, they're not bison, but there's equivalency that they have in Africa. I don't remember the term, because they're stranded on an island, and the lion, which they have realized in the last few hundred years, the lion developed more muscle. They are bigger than the regular lion on the normal ground where they can get hyenas or stuff like this. Now the difference is because their food is much stronger, so they have to develop an evolve.
So it's like kind of like the arms race, right?
What do you mean?
Well, it's the arms race. So lions that live, let's say, in an area where their prey is X weight, X size. Versus ones that would be trapped in an area where they could only hunt elephants. Of course, they'd have to evolve in order to be strong enough to take down an elephant. So that's the arms race.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the best example, if you want to look at it, is the men today and the men 100 years ago. Simple.
Yeah. Right? Well, and the arms race has changed, right? The arms race has changed. Yeah. So, turn of the 20th century, all men, literally all men, were the ones that worked. And it was before the Industrial Revolution. Everything was hard manual labor, unless you were blessed with being in royalty or somehow your family had, created sort of its own legacy with whatever. But you were either a farmer or a laborer, and you were doing hard backbreaking labor. And every man, even young men, even the boys, were into this. And so every man had to be this big, strong thing. But then at the turn of the century, the 20th century, the Industrial Revolution changed the arms race, right? So men could develop different skills. They could go into all kinds of different categories of employment. They moved away from the farm life and got into urban centers. And you're right, the arms race changed. You didn't have to be necessarily the big, brawny, shovel, axe-wielding forester or farmer. You could end up sitting in a bank or I don't know, working the stock market, being an accountant, doing something different. And your skills and your level of ability would change and evolve because of that, right?
Yeah. And you can, what is the other thing you're bringing? I think the good example as well, you can look at this is the type of policeman, that's what it was, that we had 100 years ago. Policemen that you had 100 years ago, and the military is the same. You had a standard of height and weight.
Yep.
Right? I would have never been in the military. I'm 5'7".
Same, 5'7".
Right? Yep. I remember the story of Calgary Police, and the first policeman that they had was 6'5", 350 pounds. He was a doorman, right? Let's be honest. He was a door size man.
Yeah.
And if someone was not following the rules, was probably getting beat up, right? Which is obviously now different, but you needed that, right? That was how it was drilled into. Versus now, I remember seeing a cop 5 foot tall.
Yep.
right? Now you wonder, like at 5 foot tall, when you fight a 250-pound male or female, it doesn't matter at that point. Like, what do you do, right?
Well,
Because
yeah, this is a bit of a tangent, and I agree with you.
yeah,
So what has happened now is instead of everybody rising to the standard, what a man is, the standard has been lowered to
go.
include all men.
Yeah, yeah,
And since we're just talking about men, I don't want to exclude women. I adore women. I hold
yep,
them to the highest regard, man. I really do. I've said this many times. To me, women are life bringers. They're freaking magic,
mhm,
right? And that's why I think it's important that there's a distinction between man and woman.
yeah,
Um, I worship my wife for bringing life into this world. I worship women for what they bring to the equation of man and woman in a marriage, in a union. I know my role. So I don't want to diminish women in here, but we're talking about men.
yeah,
So the standard has been lowered now. The
mhm,
standard to be what is considered a man now in the social space is
yeah,
really low.
yeah,
I mean, it's been dropped excessively
yeah.
in order to accommodate the diversity because of this change in the way that men are.
But is it
So
is it change across the world or specifically some areas? And that's something to be as well aware, because if you look in the Western world, let's go with that for the
mhm,
fun of it. We're not talking about size here, right? I'm not going to talk about like, oh, they're 5'7" instead of 6 foot. This is not what I'm talking about. But
yep.
what I'm talking about is what the amount of access we have of things is so much greater.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So the effort that has to be done is totally different, right? Now it's up to you to, you have the choice to develop the skills of protector. You have the choice to develop the skills of, leader. You have the choice. And a lot of people will decide to go for the easy way, I believe, as men, right? And I'm
Yep.
still with the men aspect where I don't have to. I don't have to be able to run a mile. I don't have to be able to lift weight. I don't have, all of this you don't have. Now, the other part I wanted to bring quickly, and I wanted to make it as well very different and clear, which I find amazing. And it's the mother and the father aspect, right? The motherly aspect where my son breaks down, there's a reaction that is extremely motherly from my wife, although she will laugh quite often because my two sons are extremely clumsy. Um, but she's very like motherly about how she will take care of them.
Yeah, that's that maternal instinct, right?
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
And my son fall, get up. It's gonna hurt for like 2 minutes. You're gonna be fine. Like shake
Yep.
it off. It's a scratch. You didn't look where you were walking. I care. I deeply care. But it's not a broken leg. They're gonna be way worse in your life. I love you, but that's just the beginning. Life is not an easy thing, right?
Yep.
And if there's an easy thing in your life, that's because you're getting comfortable. It's time to switch. Go back in the
Yep.
elevator, get back in the stairs case, go up another floor. It's time to go somewhere else and face something else. Now,
Well, it's kind of like that mother is nurture, man, father is nature kind of thing.
yeah,
And what I mean by nature in that, that might be the wrong word for somebody to understand just on its face.
okay,
A mother teaches, a mother offers their children nurture, a real comfortable, safe place to land during anything. A child wakes up in the night, they always go to mom. In my bedroom, my side of the bed is where the door is. They walk right by me every single time. Every single time they go to their mom. So so often in a mother father household, the
yeah,
children go to mom when they are hurt. They go to dad when they want something explained.
yeah.
So what I mean by mother is nurture, man, or father is nature is more often men are teaching their children about the world, and the mother is providing the love and care that the child needs to develop while the father teaches them about the world. And that's what I mean by nature. So I think
That,
there is a
yeah,
distinction there. I
yeah.
don't think that a man should not have the compassion to nurture his children in the right scenario, but categorically, I think that falls on the mother more often.
Yeah. See, it's funny because you said about the kid going to see his parents. My son comes to me. every morning, because I'm the
Mhm.
one who get up. My
Yep.
wife will rest depending how the night has been with our little one, and if I got
Yep.
up or she got up. But at 5:40, my oldest come and he's like, it's 5 o'clock, Dad. It's time to get up. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. You're supposed to get up at 6. Go back to
Yep.
bed. Can I sleep with you? Okay, yeah, for 5 minutes. Right. And then he goes. And then he's gonna read or whatever that is. But he comes to me. Why? Because mom, and that's the difference, I guess, with our situation as well. We have to be clear with that one. Mom had to wear 2 hats while I was sick.
Yep.
Mom developed a very masculine side during that time because I couldn't be there.
Yep.
So, and to drill boys, and that's the other thing, right? With boys, they're okay. So Will Ferrell say it's like running a small correctional environment.
Yeah.
I love the picture because the guy has five boys, but
Yeah.
I see it as well as it's the animal concept. The boy will fight the leader of the pack to get there, and that's just the animal process of like I'm gonna test the line.
Mhm.
And you have boys too. I mean, they
You have
will
to.
test
Yeah.
the line, right? And
Oh, even my 5-year-old does, like, on a daily basis. He
oh yeah,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
is
he
extremely
pushes.
interesting. You push the
Mhm.
buttons,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
sometimes the buttons, well, you pushed it once too many times. You should go upstairs, go to your room because you're
Mhm.
gonna fly to it if I have to get up. Um, but I find that as well nowadays, like we talk, men change a lot. Um, there's a nurturing that is, and not by the woman, by the man that is over the top. Like, oh, I suffered so much in my life. I don't want my kid to suffer. Well, this is life. If they don't suffer, they're gonna be hurt when it
Yep.
comes to time. They, like, I mean, and this is also how you look, right? We cannot compare whatever each path of each life and so on and so forth, which is totally fine. I get that, but life is not comfortable place, or you don't learn.
Yep.
Right? But each person developed their own skills to go through things, and if you don't give those challenges for your kids, they won't develop those skills, right? It's like a vaccine, if you wish, right? Like those challenges are the virus that your body has to develop antibodies for,
Yep.
and all of that to say, if you don't challenge them, if you don't make them do things that suck,
Yep.
they're gonna find themselves in that really they won't know how to function. I remember my dad, man. We would heat our house with wood, and so they would receive. My dad would receive, I think it's 14 cord of wood per year.
Yep.
So it was our job, me and dad, to do it. My mom or my sister would do that, and I remember my dad telling me in our backyard, and we had a decent backyard. He's like, "Okay, I need all that wood there, and I'll give you $20." And it was a good 5-6 hours that I shifted. And the following week, I'm like, I would like to have again money to get out, right? To go buy candies or go to theater or whatever that is, or if I had a girlfriend, buy flowers, whatever it is that I was doing at that time.
Yep.
And I was probably 12, 13, 14, give or take. So, well, okay, you're gonna take the wood you moved here in place, and you're gonna bring it back where it was. And I was so mad. I was so freaking upset that he did. Why did I move it first if it was fine there? And it was not the idea. The idea is you're gonna work to get something. Because
Mhm.
I can't give it to you, but it'd be too easy. And
Yep.
you're gonna do it well. Because if I have to make you redo it, it's gonna be painful, right? Um, and those were lessons, as simple as it is, right?
Yep.
If I
And those
look
were
at
lessons from your father.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
You
it
touched
was
on
go ahead.
Well, you touched on something that's really important. You said that at your lowest time, your wife was wearing both hats because you weren't filling the masculine role.
Mhm.
That was the exact same, and I think that is the one of the one of the challenges that men face when they are stricken with mental health problems, or even physical problems for that matter. If you're incapable physically because of an injury,
Mhm.
is if you are not filling your role, your masculine role in the relationship, the woman will fill that role. It's different than men. If men don't have a wife around or a woman in the relationship anymore, but are still parenting, they will just parent as a man.
Yep.
Right. And
Yep.
I was a single dad with 2 boys for a while. I wasn't being a mom. I was just being a dad. I didn't even know what that was because I had to learn how to be a dad on my own, which
Yep.
sucked because there was so many mistakes. Anyways, that's totally off topic. That is the distinction between women, is they have the ability to do that.
Mhm.
I don't think most women want to.
No.
And, there can be some resentment in the relationship for a while because of that. And it can be very, very hard on them. So if you're a man in a relationship and you are not, I don't know, by choice, fulfilling the roles as the masculine part of that equation, your wife will. And
Yep.
I think there will be hell to pay eventually if you don't come back and be that masculine role. If your wife ends up having to do that for the rest of your marriage, I think you're in big trouble.
Yep.
And my wife was holding on for a long time, and until I came back and started to be able to fulfill the masculine role in our household, she was wearing those hats just like your wife was, and it wasn't good. I mean, I can look back on that now and see it. And thankfully she stuck with me long enough for me to see me come back and to begin to fulfill that role again, because she was doing the same thing that your wife was doing.
Yeah. And it was I never noticed it, to be honest, until one of my friends, who's a coach as well, came over, and we went for a rucksack march of a couple hours. And as she walked in, and I'll try to give you the picture of it, but my wife was sitting at a table doing her stuff for work or whatever that is, and I'm just like, okay, Natasha, Karina, Natasha, whatever, and they exchanged a quick little words, and then we took off. And as soon as we took off, Karina's like, your wife has a masculine side that is very strong. And I'm
Mhm.
like, what are you talking about? And I always saw my wife as the person I met, right?
Right.
Obviously she evolved, don't get me wrong, but in her, what I see is the woman that I met, that that filled me, right, as
Yep.
a person. So, and it took me a while to understand or see the signs. But then I look at the sign, and I kind of transfer it to what I know from the past. So my father, mother, and who was sitting at a table when someone would come and whatever get together, or was my dad.
Yep.
It's my dad who sat at the table and just exchanged just 1, 2, 3 words. That's it. It was simple, was clear, was just ding. And then I was like, okay, well, now I see it. And it's not that I took her hat, her hat. It was not feminine in it. I had retrieved now my place as a man. I knew I could now function again, get out the grocery, and shovel outside if I had to shovel the snow, whatever maybe that is my task at home. Um, but until then, I had never seen that she was wearing that hat, and she had to. And as of today, which is extremely interesting, because when I got sick, my oldest was 1 year old.
Yep.
Yeah. And so he was spending 24/7 with mommy, and he
Mhm.
did so for 2 years, 3 years. Um, now my youngest, he's with me 24/7, right? Which
Mhm.
is extremely funny. My youngest either is gonna roll the world or be in jail. I mean, he's vicious at times. He
Yeah.
is he's rough with his oldest brother, and the oldest brother is a bit more in touch with his feeling or inner self or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Which is extremely funny to see and interesting because they are evolving differently.
Yeah.
Um, but like you said, and like we talked, right, there's a big difference and there's a big approach that will change the kids uh, as they grow old as well as a man. And there's again like the aspect of saying the job doesn't have any relationship with what type of man you are. That's who you are per and who you develop with time and so on and so forth. Um, and there's stuff that are specific to men. And like you
Mhm.
said, right? Like as much as I could say my wife wore 2 hats, she didn't fully depends, right? As same as if I'm trying to take care of my youngest nowadays, I will never be mommy. Mommy is unique to mommy. I don't know how to be mommy.
Yep.
And as same as I'm sure uh, women won't know how to be daddy. Daddy
No,
is
not
the
necessarily,
influence.
but they'll take that role on. See, that's like I said,
They
that's
will.
the distinction. Men
Yeah.
men don't do that. Men don't yeah, it's simple to say. They just don't do it. Or maybe some do. I don't know very
Yeah.
many that do. I've never really heard of that. I've never heard of men wearing both hats like you say. Because
Yeah.
and I know from my own experience that when I was single and had two boys, it was just dad. I didn't change anything. I
Yeah.
continued, and at that time, though I was developing the symptoms of mental health problems and the
Yeah.
trauma had already occurred, I was just continuing to be the man, the male role model and the father figure. I never wore both hats. I don't know if overall men have that capacity. That's why women are so important and why I really do in some kind of way idolize women in that regard because they have more ability than men in some way that they will in an empty space just fill that void and take that on, whereas a man won't. A man will just be like, well, there's no more mom anymore,
Yeah.
here's dad and dad alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I mean, and you're right. I have a dear friend, one of my best buddies, is raising his two boys, and my son loved going there. Like there's no tomorrow, right? Because
Yep.
there's no mom who say you cannot shoot your Nerf gun in my face. It's,
Yeah.
war is open. Let's do it, right? And as
Yep.
dads, we're just like, oh, no problem. Let's do it. It's gonna go to war, and I'm gonna take the biggest Nerf gun, and if you come close to me, it's off. But
Yep.
at home, which is extremely funny, his Nerf guns are beside my guns, real guns, and my safe. Why? Because he shot mom a few times in the face, and she
You got to
got
lock
very
up the Nerf
pissed.
guns.
Right? Yeah. But there is a difference as well, right? Same as there's a difference in mentality, there's a difference in humor, and so on and so forth. But there is a difference. I mean, how can I say this? I asked my buddy came to me and he's like, "Guess who got into a fight today?" And my first question was not which son, because I figured who it was.
Yep.
It was, did he win?
Hmm.
Right. And the first question my wife asked is how many suspension days he has gotten from it.
Yeah.
And he had one by all means, because it was a bully who punched him with a lock from a locker,
Oh
like
yeah.
full on his face. And the other kid, three punched, broke his nose. Tell him I'm proud of him, but not do it again. Right?
Well,
Like,
you
it's
know what?
just
Sometimes that has to happen.
oh
My
no, 100%. Yeah.
my stepdad has he's been my father figure for 25 years, and my mom recently passed, so he will remain like my father figure to the day he passes. He has a tattoos like I do, and on one arm he has a tattoo that says "Mother is love," and then on the other forearm he has a tattoo that says "Father is knowledge." And he realizes the distinction between man and woman in that regard. And
Yeah.
he is a really great example of a man and a father. He had three children of his own, and then he adopted three children when our families blended together because he came into my life when I was 18. And I've been able to see that growing up, finally having a male role model in my life, even though we didn't connect initially as father and son because I was a male. I was or male. I hope I'm still a male. I was a male. I used to be a male. I'm still one. I used to be one too.
Yeah.
But I got to see that him as a man with a whole bunch of different skills that he could bring to the table, and I got to see him be a father to all six of us in his own way. And so that was nice because up until that point in my life, without a father figure, um, I would have had zero going into being a father myself. And I honestly had very little because I didn't interact with my stepdad much because then I was gone away to college and then I was living on my own in my own house and doing my own life. So it's not like he really raised me, but sort of vicariously through my siblings, I got to see what it was like to be a dad. I got to watch him raise my younger siblings because I'm the oldest. And so I was able to see those. And I think it's so important that men are a good role model for their children. And I don't have the stats. I wish I would have known this is the question because there's something so important. I wanted to take this in a bit of a different way.
What is it?
When a man is not in the house, the children suffer more than if the woman is not in the house. There is something really unique, and this is backed up by statistics, and anybody can go on Google and enter in the keywords about the difference between households who are fatherless versus households who are motherless. This is not to take away from mothers. This is not to belittle or undermine their role in parenting. It just simply is statistically driven based on real world data. Fatherless homes create worse children. For some reason, the father figure is the glue that binds the children to their future in a way that increases their ability to succeed more than the mother does. That the nurturing and the knowledge or the nature, that the nurturing from mother plus the knowledge and the nature from father is so vitally important that if children don't have a fatherly figure or a father role, they won't succeed in life as much. It's really astounding. In fact, the number of incarcerated children, the incarcerated teens, is something like 80% worse from fatherless homes. The number of women that end up in the sex trade industry from fatherless homes. You can take almost any category: IQ, testing scores, success in college, whether or not they will have a good business, whether or not they will have a successful marriage. The list goes on and on. When you take the father out of the home, it seems that they lose what my dad's tattoo says, the knowledge.
Yeah.
They always have the
But
nurture of mother, but it seems that they lose the knowledge, that real world experience that a good male role model or a good father figure brings to the household.
so I'm looking at statistics right now because while you're talking, I typed.
Yeah, you have
Um,
that fancy thing. I can't do that. So go, yeah, tell us, can you see some of the stats on there?
yeah, so at first, like they say here, as supported by data below, children from fatherless home are more likely to be poor,
Yep.
become involved in drugs, alcohol abuse, and so on, drop out of school, suffer from health, emotional problems. Boys are more likely to become involved in crimes, and girls are more likely to become pregnant as teens. Now, I was looking at statistics for poor aspect between, that's the difference here. What they say is between married couple families and female headed household. In 2011, okay, 10.9% of the family are poor when they're married couple, and then the poor aspect
Yep.
versus 47.6 when it's female headed household, and that's the first one. So, and then they're talking about drugs and alcohol. They don't have statistics when I'm looking at this, and that's all based into the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Yep.
Obviously, we're in Canada, but like their population is greater, so it's always interesting to read.
Yeah, but I think basically there are multiple studies that have been done in this way, and there's different there's websites and there's different stat groups, and I don't know what the real word is for that. It all seems to be the same. It all seems to point to that the nurturing of the mother is very important, but the abilities of a good father are just as important, if not more important, for the proper upbringing of the children.
Yeah.
Driven based on statistics alone. I'm not, like I said, sadly we have to walk a fine line.
Yep.
Even though I'm going to speak the truth, I'm going to say it out loud. This does not undermine or diminish women.
Nope.
It's just the way it should be. It's just the way it's the way it is.
Yep.
And the way it should be is that a man and a woman should be, raising their children, knowing their proper roles, where the woman has the feminine role and the man has the masculine role. And if the man and the masculine role is gone, it's the children who suffer.
Yeah. They're talking here also about physical and emotional health, right? A study of 1977 children aged 3 and older living with residential father or father figure found that children living with married biological parents had significantly fewer externalization and internalizing behavior problem or suicidal problem.
Yeah, and it's
So
even worse. It even goes farther than that, John. I've read this. Even children that are raised in an unstable home that has a male and female role model
Yep.
will be better than the children who were raised where the home was separated. So you're even better off to be in a pretty crappy family where the mother and father stay together than if they are split up.
Yeah.
So, you said, what is a man? at the beginning? Well, number one, if you're going to be a father, you damn sure better be a good man, because
Mhm.
your children rely on you to have a good future.
Yeah.
Even if you're not that great, and that's what that's proven. I'm not telling everybody just be a shameful father or anything, but even if you're not that great, even if you're just trying your best and you don't think that you are doing the best, your children will still succeed greater than if you leave.
Yeah.
You know, so many men, you know, when the relationship gets tough, they throw their hands up in the air and the children end up with the mother. And the stats are driving that that's not good for the children, that the father should be part of the life.
And let's
It's
be honest,
so
another point
vitally
as well.
important, right?
Yeah. Now you're saying being at home, and I want to make it clear as well. So,
Or
um,
at least sharing the responsibility if you can't be at home, because that happens. I mean, I was there. I had half custody of my children, my two boys.
yeah,
One was a stepson, and that's a story for another time. But when I was single, I still had half. I had full or shared custody
custody.
of my children. I know what you're saying, John. I 100% agree. I cut you off there, but yeah, you're right.
Um, so when you look at it, well, I was not even thinking about like the share aspect. I was thinking about um, and that's something that I don't know. I cannot speak of
Yep.
necessarily, but I've seen example with the entourage of my son,
Mhm.
where like we're in Alberta, where there's a lot of oil worker. Oil worker works 3 weeks on, 1 week off, something like this, right?
Yep.
Um, where they're practically gone.
Hmm.
I've seen it in the military as well, where the guys are gone 9 months of the year, and then 3 months they're at home, and it's a celebration for 3 months, but they're gone as well again, and the kids will pay for this as well, right? That's another factor that we have to also mention, where I've seen kids who now develop anxiety disorder because, well, dad's never there,
Yeah.
or mom's AWOL, or and not AWOL, but I mean they're working, so therefore they're not there. Um, so there's also that difference. I think that has to be, like, it would have to be looked into statistic what they speak about, and we don't have a statistic, and we're just mentioning things and having conversation
Yep.
because it's just interesting. And again, it's, I think we repeated 50 times so far, but I want to make sure I'm not removing woman of the aspect. I'm like you. The thing I said to my kid every time he raised his voice to mom is that's the person you have to give the most respect in the world,
Yep.
and then whoever after. Um, but a man brings something different, and a woman brings something different. And I guess the next question is going to be in the next episode, or whenever we have someone who wants to talk about it. What is a woman? We'll ask the question. We can go on about it. But
Well, I think that should be a woman.
well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what do I know? I mean, I could never know what the inner workings of a woman's mind, because I have a man's mind, and there's massive difference, right? We
I
think
totally
on things
agree.
totally differently, right?
But you had a mom,
I did have, yeah, of course.
right?
Wouldn't be here if
And
I
I
didn't have a mom, right?
exactly, and I had a mom too who had big boots to fill by all means,
Yeah.
who was nurturing as well. My dad was gone until I was 7 because he was working whatever full week on and so on. Um, but she had to wear the hats,
Yeah.
right? Which is kind of interesting because my wife had to wear the hats as well. My dad got sick. I got sick. Right? We we don't fall far necessarily from the tree until we break those cycle,
Yeah.
right? And or we get out of it. And I want to make it clear as well. Another thing that I said earlier, there's the alpha, there's the beta, and so on and so forth. I don't care what the person wear. I know what I want for me, and that's it. I have an uncle that I love who's been driving forklift, and he loves his job, and he does that for probably the last 40 years. For me, it would drive me bunkers, right?
Yeah.
I need something different daily. But if he's happy in that position that he wears, and he's a good father as well, good, right? That
Hmm.
fills his boots, right? His buckets that he has are filled up at the end of the day. That's all that matters to me. So, as a man who listen to this, if you are happy where you sit and that fills your boots daily and you feel fulfilled, fantastic, you won.
Yep.
Now I have another question for you, and it's going to be totally different than what we are at, because I was listening to since I have the little kid during the day, I listen to books when I'm with him. So I
Yep.
have a question for you, and the other question is, what is success
Hmm.
And that's a good one. That's an
Yeah.
interesting one because it differ and it's different for each one of us.
Yeah. Success now for me is different than success used to be for me.
Exactly.
So I think there's an evolution that can occur. W- I think there's an evolution that should occur as to what success is.
Yep.
So when I was growing up as a young man, success to me was very material. I fell into the category for a while that could be referred to as toxic when I
Okay.
was young.
Yeah.
I was pretty aggressive, wasn't afraid to fight, had a few street fights here and there, chased women, drank my face off, did really, really stupid things, was careless with my body and my mind
Hmm.
because success to me was proving to people that I was strong and powerful, that I was indestructible. Success to me was looking a certain way, having a specific aesthetic. Success to me was being attractive to women and successfully getting a woman's attention through chasing her.
Hmm.
So when I was in my 20s, success was fully material.
Okay.
But I've had a lot of time to look in the rearview mirror in the last few years,
Yeah.
and I've realized that those successes are so transient as to be not successes at all.
Hmm.
They're just fleeting moments of short term pleasure that is masked psychologically as success.
Yeah.
So here's what success to me feels like now. Success to me is the ability to control my mind.
Hmm.
Success to me is the ability to be the healthiest version of me that I can be. When I look at the things in my life, success for me is being very grateful for all that I have. What I have isn't much, but to me, it's so much more than enough. I have 3 children that are healthy.
Yep.
We have groceries in the fridge that are nourishing.
Yep.
My wife and I have been able to work hard enough to afford a farm and to start farming.
Hmm.
We have learned to communicate in such a way that we are able to successfully continue our marriage. And so now success to me is less material and more ethereal, meaning that it's not necessarily something that you can grasp. It's something more in my heart and my soul. And so that's what I think success is to me now. I also look to achieve certain things. You know, looking into the future, I see us having a successful podcast.
Yep.
So that's another form of success to me. It's a goal that I want. Um, I'd like to achieve certain things physically, like being able to run long distance marathons in the future. So that's also going to feel like a level of success when I achieve those goals. But on the top of it all, success has changed for me now. I
Same.
prioritize the emotional and mental stability of success more than I prioritize any kind of material success.
Hmm.
I'll put it back on you.
It's you're totally right. So I'll go at first with I'll get to the podcast aspect because I'm going to link it to a various thing. But happiness for not happiness, success for me is happiness.
Mm.
Okay.
And then you got to
Um,
then you have to define what happiness means for you, because that
that's it.
happiness can be very short term and fleeting, right? You know, you can't build yourself on like that material happiness. So what does happiness mean then?
So I'm gonna have to go back a few years back, but
Hmm.
at the age of 14 years old, my father told me, and you have to think, right? At the teenager years, your brain is a big sponge that takes everything as is. That is, they will take it white, black and white, right? Like you don't
Very
really,
literally, yeah.
Yes. So my dad told me never be comfortable. Never be comfortable. So the military was a big choice of not being comfortable because I was in English, which is a language I didn't speak, was something aggressive that I was not necessarily into it, and so on and so forth. Um, and I mean, moving to Brazil was a good example, and so on and so forth, right? Was I happy in this? I was happy in the military for the family. There's a check mark, right? But there was always the idea of grandeur, right? Like, okay, I will get then a bigger car, and then I'll get a bigger house. And also remember the same aspect when my father told me one day, he's like, "This is not your home. This is not your house, and it will never be. This is my house." So he told me I was 13, right? So, and then I started to move and live a different place. Never felt home until 2 years ago, or a year ago, give or take. I hated where I lived every time because I never felt home. Because young, I was told, this is not yours. It won't be yours until you pay for it. And it's just recently that I accepted things that I have.
Yep.
And see the beauty in it, which brought happiness. So we have a smaller house than where we live in Ottawa, right? We have a smaller backyard, and so on and so forth, right? Which I found very difficult. I mean, we dropped down 1,000 square foot. I was like, oh my God, like we have boxes that have not been opened still after 6 years of living here that are in the garage, right? Because we have a small home. And at first I was like, well, if you succeed in life, if you do well, you have a big house, front garage, double garage, and all the kind of really typical idea, the big SUV or whatever that is. And I come now at the phenomenon after being sick, being good, striving in life a bit more than I used to, accepting where I'm sitting. Not that I'm going to stay there forever. I'm evolving. Yep. But I also accept that life made me go through this, and that's why I'm sitting here now. And I'm looking forward to the next step, right? That I'm going to work to it and carry on. So happiness. Now, there's obviously different level of happiness. There's the happy father seeing his kids growing and seeing his spouse striving into her own business. But just being happy. And that means that you don't have to look at something or get something. You have to smile on your lips.
Yeah.
And you don't know why, but it's that warm feeling inside that tells you life is not easy. Life made me pay a few times, but I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy I had to go through this shit. I'm happy I had to suffer to carry on and get out of it. And I always bring back the military, the police so much, but the bounding that I had, and you might have that bounding in the OPC because you're all in the same place and you're kind of forced to it. I find police here was different because we all went back home at night every time. Yep. But the military, when going through hardship, when I look back, I don't even see the pain. I see the funny time, the dark humor we had to put it in to go through it.
Oh, and for sure.
Those smiles that I have, thinking about it, that's happiness there, right? Because it's pride that you evolve and went through it. But again, that's not the happiness I'm talking about. The happiness I'm talking about is I get up in the morning, I look outside, and I'm happy to just look at the sunrise. It's that simplicity of happiness.
Yeah.
That you technically don't need big. You need simple to be thankful of what you have.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't say that you're going to be stuck at this. You want more. You're going to develop. You're going to conquer, and so on and so forth. This podcast, buddy, it's a blast to just speak with you, right? It's a blast to look at your post that you send me daily or every other days. It's a blast to be around a like-minded person. Also, the person who's going to temper how I go when I get a bit higher, because I know that's how you are with me at times, which is good because that way I don't say stupid things, although I do still. But that happiness is golden to me, and it's not a salary, right?
That's so funny. Yeah, people think we're making money on this. Oh man. You don't know how expensive it is to
Yeah.
do
But
podcasting, but
and it's recent. It's very recent because when I wrote the book, right, I
yeah,
was like, I'm gonna be a bestseller, and it was important for me, and I would sell at least 5,000 books, which I was counting. Okay, well, $7 per book. It's gonna pay this or
yeah,
whatever that is. The truth is, the book cost me approximately $20,000 with everything comes with it to make.
yeah,
Um, and the book probably sold 1,000 copies, give or take. That was not the payoff. The payoff was not the money that came. The first payoff I had, and it's that's the magic that I'm going to express that I got. It's when a mother of a past veteran from U.S. messaged me and told me I thought it was my fault that he committed suicide until I read your book and I understood what PTSD is and how dark it gets in my mind. And I
yeah,
mean, I'm a little guy. I'm not a guy who's been into combat. That's the truth. I've been to places, country where war, but I did not go to combat into shitty situation in the police aspect. Um, but I'm not a hero in any shape or form. I'm just a normal guy who served. Um, and my story, or how I explained it, gave her peace. That was the payoff.
hmm
Right?
yeah,
So sometimes we forget or we expect a bill sign, right? A money sign at the end of it, which truly is not the cash. As same as some people could think, like we talked before in a previous podcast about medals. The true
yeah,
heroes do not look for the medals. The true hero, like Jesse La Rochelle, carry his buddy who passed despite his pain.
yeah.
That's a
That's right.
hero, right?
Yeah,
Um, and that's a warrior. That's because a warrior does not request this. The warrior is looking forward for the next time that he's going to be used in
yeah,
whatever conflict or situation. So this is where it's very different, and I love the fact that you brought up right away. It is different than it used to be, and I
yeah.
think that's wisdom as well.
Well, John, even in the like, even in my life in the last 3 years, this has changed. So we bought what we thought was our final home, our dream home
Yeah,
in the town that we live in. It's not a big town. There's only about 8 or 9,000 people that live here, and then there's a whole bunch of little mini communities. But otherwise, it's a wasteland. There's not a wasteland because it's terrible. It's just nothing around us. So anyhow, we lived in the urban area of
okay,
where I live. We thought we had our dream home, and we thought life was busy, and we thought we had it made with our salaries, and we were happy. But I didn't even consider what real happiness could be until I looked back now that we're here on the farm. We have so much more to do. We have so much more responsibility, and we have so much less money to do the things outside of our daily life. So that basically the word is we're broke. Not so broke that we can't afford life, but farming's expensive. If people think that you make money as a farmer, not really.
yeah,
However, my wife and I are more happy now
mm,
than we were.
yeah,
We're connected more to nature now. We have to wake up early. We have more responsibility. It makes us appreciate every single moment of the day because we have to squeeze our life into the empty spots, the empty time slots of the day. Because in the
yeah.
morning, there's chores, middle of the day and afternoon, evening, there's chores. Spring, summer, fall's way busier, and it's a little bit more chaotic. Two and 3 years ago, when I was very mentally unwell, I bought myself a giant fuck off truck. I bought an all black special edition F-250, and it had a huge lift kit and all the special like bells and whistles. Cost too much money. I don't even want to say. And I drove that thing around thinking that this was happiness,
Mhm.
that people would at least look at this truck and think somebody in there is worth something.
You made
Well,
it.
yeah. Well, I sold that truck a year ago, and I'm now driving a rusted out 2013 Ford F-150, and I couldn't be happier. So I hope and I think that people need to evolve in what is happy for them. And not everybody gets there, and that's really too bad for them. I wish more people would start to realize that happiness is not dopamine hits. Happiness is not the short-term pleasures of life. And I heard Dr. Jordan Peterson talk about this. He's like, it's not all margaritas and sunshine. Let's say you go to Mexico for a week. Well, that's 1 week of your life. That's nothing. The things that you do every single day, if you despise them, you will be miserable.
Mhm.
You brush your teeth twice a day, every day for your entire life. You go to the bathroom 10 times a day, every day for your entire life. You sleep, 6 to 8 hours every day for your entire life. And most of your life, almost every minute of your life, is spent doing the mundane part of life.
Mhm.
And if you can't see the happiness in that, if you are dissatisfied with just living, that's not happy.
No.
And all you will do is chase the next thing that gives you short-term pleasure. And that was me for a lot of years. And I think what happened was when my emotional happiness was stripped away so that I couldn't feel happy. You know what I'm talking about, John.
Mhm.
When I was as close to complete loss of me as I had ever been, there was nothing to make me happy. And so now what I have is the backdrop of misery to see the beauty on the opposite side of the spectrum.
That's it.
And maybe that's one of the big gifts that emotional trauma and PTSD and depression give to people is it gives you that darkness so that the light looks more beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I'm lucky in that way. When I look in the rearview mirror and I'm reminded of how hellish and painful it was to get where I am now. At the same time, now everything's so much more beautiful.
Mhm.
You talk about just seeing a sunrise and thinking how nice it is. Well, go on my Instagram. I do a little sunrise philosophy a few times a month when there's a good sunrise here. I don't miss a sunrise.
Yeah.
I'm up before the sunrises every day, 365 every day. And when there's a beautiful sunrise, I'm standing outside, usually barefoot if it's not -40. And I'm just enjoying one of the most beautiful things that a human being can see in his lifetime, which is the sunrise.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And happiness is in these moments. It's not in cheeseburgers and margaritas and chasing women and buying new clothes and upgrading your pickup truck. It's
Because
it's
that's a
in
short pleasure, a
and it's
short
just
happiness.
short-term pleasure. Yep.
And it's
It's
a
so
cover up.
much deeper. Yeah. And I don't think you can I don't think happiness comes from without. I think it has to come from within.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
100. You, I mean, if we go in layman's terms, a truck won't make you happy.
No.
Won't create that. A new gun won't create that. Although it's always great for Christmas to have a new gun. I'm just gonna throw that out to whoever listened to this. Um, but I mean, like seriously, right? Like I would enjoy more personally a good meal at my house with quality people, quality conversation, than if I'm going to the keg and spending $200.
Mhm.
Where it's busy, it's loud, it's and I mean the same steak will cost me probably $15. Um, I have to make it right, but
But that's part of the beauty of it,
exactly, exactly.
because
There's a
because you're earning that
process,
steak when you're cooking it, right? Yeah.
so there's a joy in the process, and I think a lot of it nowadays we forget about this. And I'm going to touch what we touched earlier before. It's the man becoming a man. It's a process.
Mhm.
Go back to the lion and the elephant. The lion does not just enjoy the meal. The lion is such a good hunter. It's because he enjoyed the process.
That's right.
And that's and the wolf is the same as a team, right? They are organized. They're tactically organized as animals to go on their prey.
Yep.
Right. And it's gonna enjoy the violence it has to inflict to the deer, to the whatever maybe the Rudolph of Christmas. They're gonna eat, right?
Children are not allowed to listen to this. Not that one right there. Anyways, yeah, you're right. You're touching on something that's called the hedonic adaptation principle.
Oh, I never heard
I'll
of that.
explain that to you because you just said it. You just said it in a different way.
Okay.
Well, number one, it's in a lion's nature to enjoy hunting. It's in a lion's nature to enjoy the chase. If they hated chasing the prey, they wouldn't have survived, right?
Mhm.
So the hedonic adaptation principle or the hedonic adaptation is this kind of thing, or they call it the hedonic treadmill. If you are, well, I'll use salary just to make it easier to explain.
Okay.
A person makes $100,000, and they didn't. Previously, they made $50,000, so they get a $50,000 raise.
Yep.
It's like all of a sudden, like, wow, look at what I can afford. I can upgrade my car. I can get a mortgage for a bigger house.
Well, technically in Canada, we'll give you like $50 more per pay. But it's
Yeah.
because of the
Yeah.
tax.
That's another podcast episode altogether.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So you can imagine this. You get a big upgrade in your salary from $50,000 to $100,000. You'd be thrilled
Mhm.
for like 5 minutes.
Mhm.
Hedonism is the pursuit of pleasure. Hedonic adaptation is that once you get the pleasure enough, it doesn't become pleasureful anymore. So once you have gotten from a salary of $50,000 to $100,000 and you've upgraded your life to that salary bubble,
Mhm.
within a short time, you're just as happy as you were in the $50,000 bubble.
Mhm.
It's hedonic adaptation. You adapt to the pleasure at the level that you happen to be in your socioeconomic status.
Yeah.
So even if you were to go from $100,000 to $50 million a year salary, within a short time, you would simply adapt psychologically to living a lifestyle at $50 million. The car, the Maserati or whatever, I don't know. I don't even know a whole lot of car manufacturers to pick one. Maserati. Let's say you went from Chevy to Maserati. Well, your Chevy Impala maybe made you happy at 20 years old, and now you got 50 million and you buy a real fancy Porsche or something. Within a few months, that Porsche is going to be the same as the Chevy Impala. So no matter how far you climb in the chase of pleasure, you never reach the ceiling. You always just end up coming back to baseline happy, because happiness doesn't come from without, it comes from within.
Yeah.
Pleasure is pleasure. Happiness is different.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
And it's in the pursuit of goals, not the achievement itself, where you find happiness. The end of the thing when you win might be pleasureful, but it's not happy. Once you win the medal, once you cross the finish line, once you get the thing, it's over.
Mhm.
Your dopamine crashes. You go way down and then you come back to baseline. I bought that beautiful, great big black truck, and it was like, woohoo, look at, this big fancy thing. Didn't matter. Nothing changed in my life. No status change whatsoever.
Yeah.
It just went right back to baseline. And that's
It's funny. I did the
hedonic
same.
adaptation, right?
Yeah.
No matter what you do, no matter what you pursue for pleasure, it will never change your happiness. They are two separate things. And if you chase what you think is happiness instead of things like productivity or goals or personal development, or at least being grateful for the things you have, you will never be happy.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. It goes back to exactly what we were talking about, right? That enjoying the process, because
Yep.
that's the payoff. The
So
process is also the payoff.
so I want to tie it in. This might hurt some feelings, but I want to take the truth to this, because we're talking about happiness and being a man. And I can say this because I used to be. Is a man happy when he is not at his best? So I got to a point in my life where I was 75 pounds overweight. I was drinking every day, smoking dope all the time, and doing nothing. The process to get me to where I am now, where my physical form has an aesthetic that would be considered pleasing, quote, has been such an arduous challenge as to nearly break me in order to overcome, the weight loss of 75 pounds and quitting drinking and getting myself to a place of betterment. But the satisfaction I have of walking that path has been one of the greatest achievements in my life. And I look out on the world and I see so many men who are living a sedentary lifestyle, who are carrying around 50 to 100 pounds of weight, who go to work probably, and they're good guys. They're not bad guys. They're good guys.
Yeah.
But they're just stuck in this wheel of every day never achieving something greater. And
In themselves.
yep. And I think that there's no happiness in this. And that's probably why so many men are stuck on this hedonic treadmill of just chasing these little pleasures over and over again. Like when I was young, when I was a young man. And I can say this without being a hypocrite because I was this until I finally learned. And it took a lot of imposter syndrome, and I had to look up to some people, and I had to see the bigger picture, and I had to be honest with myself. I had to take that cold hard stare in the mirror and see, is this really making me happy? Living the Netflix and chill life? Sitting on the couch, never being outside, never doing anything difficult or arduous with my life, with my body, with my mind? Of course it isn't. If it was awesome, I would have felt great.
Yep.
Nobody's happy that way. And so when we're tying this in at the end, what makes a man? Maybe what makes a man is trying to be the most savage, monstrous man that you can be while exercising grace and compassion.
Mhm.
And maybe that's the happy path.
Yeah. I think it is. I truly think it is. I think I found peace when I take care, and first thing first, and this is what things that also transfer. And I saw a lot of people, men, who do the same, and it transferred a lot of things into their life, right? From being selfless, not caring about themselves, to starting to put themselves first into their life, right? Because although there's sacrifice into being a man, I believe, in that aspect, there's being ready to be a man, and that's a build
Yeah.
up as well, and that's the daily build up, right? Because you need to be like every human in the world, you need to be healthy physically and mentally. So that's two things: whatever you put in your system, how you protect your system, how you work it out, and how you feed mentally your system. Right? There's just
Yep.
various ways of looking, but it's a completion of things,
Mhm.
right? I see a lot of people who has either one or the other. Right? Physically, they're extremely in shape, but they don't feed their soul.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's kind of a half happiness, right? There's something missing. Or
Yeah.
or I'm looking at my my father that I talked about earlier, who always worked with his head, always. Right? It's always been a brain work aspect, and now at 70 years old, he's finally working physically,
Mhm.
and he is at his best self ever. And it's extremely funny to see. If I bring up a big conversation nowadays when we talk, if we ever talk on the phone, within 5 minutes he's out.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to have those anymore. He has done that all his life. But lifting crates of cucumber, which is as minimal like physical effort that it takes him, it's a lot because he never did any. It's the world for him,
Yeah.
right? He found peace in that. And he was explaining, he's like, I want to bring you on one of my run when you come this summer. And I'm like, okay. What time we get up? 3 o'clock on the morning. And then we drive to the farm, which is whatever kilometers away from him. And he's like, we get a little truck. He's like, you sit beside me, and I'm gonna explain everywhere we go to drop like some cucumbers. And he's excited like no tomorrow.
Mhm.
Like I never saw my father before excited, as an example. Um, the same way as I've seen, and some that I would call mentors in my life, where they decided to make a choice of shift, leaving a very steady job with a steady salary where they were proficient and they're very high up, they got to a certain level, and they drop everything to create their own challenge in life and embracing life like there's no tomorrow now,
Mhm.
which I find amazing to see. Um, and those are also mentors, not only as human, but as male,
Yep.
right? Where I look at it, like I want to be a man like this.
Yeah.
Um, because I have a lot of respect. But when I look at that man or that person per se, I find that person so stoic compared to what I have in my hand. Now I'm fully aware I can develop this. How I need to figure it out, right?
Yep.
And there's a joy. I go back to that lion who enjoyed the chase, the hunt, and so on. You gotta enjoy the evolving aspect in your life.
Yeah.
You gotta
Well,
enjoy.
I think everybody would. It's just that we're so stuck in a society where pleasure is everywhere. And
Mhm.
you know what? We're gonna have to end this episode because
Yeah.
we've been going for a long time, so it'll have to be for another time. But I think every man has that potential.
Oh yeah.
It's on the spectrum. You don't need to become David Goggins,
No.
right? You know, and that's one of the things that the comparison is the thief of joy,
Yeah.
right? And you don't need to compare yourself to anybody. You just need to compare yourself to you, and you need to find what makes you happy. So
Yeah.
here's I want to share something funny because I had a really good laugh with my wife. And it's going to sound like I'm polishing my own fingernails or, you know, whatever. Doesn't matter. I had to work really hard to get in shape again. I had to work really hard to lose that 70 some pounds. And after I did and lost a bunch of weight, I regained an aesthetic like a 20-year-old athlete.
Okay.
Guess what happened in my life? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. No change. My wife loved me when I was fat, and she loves me now that I'm lean and in shape.
Yeah.
But not a single thing in my life changed. However, in me, something changed. I know what it took to get there. I know the sacrifices I've had to make in order to become physically well and structured in such a way that I'm healthy now. It doesn't come with ease.
Yeah.
You don't get that way by sitting on the couch. You have to put in literal thousands and thousands of hours in order to become successful like that. So for me, the challenge of losing this weight and becoming better has nourished my soul. And not a single thing in my external world has changed. Nobody cares. There's 8 billion people in the world. No one cares I have a six pack, but I do because I know how I got it. And it was through blood, sweat, and tears and hardship.
Yeah.
And that's there's the success, right? If the path is hard, the end result is better, right?
Yeah. I think it's Eric Thomas who says, enjoy the breakthrough because this is your reward.
Mm,
Because when you get to your success, when you accomplish your mission, you're already upon looking into another one.
yeah.
So, and I think it's totally right. And if you go with let's say the fitness or the physical appearance, the first 4 weeks, after 4 weeks, you see the difference. After 8 weeks, people start seeing the difference, right? And that's people around you. After 12 weeks, people you don't know will see that you change or recognize the difference.
Yep.
So I'm with you 100%. I'm still in that process. It's been a while. I enjoy my food, but I enjoy small pleasure, right? And
Yep.
that's the rewiring that is in the brain. That when I get that breakthrough that I have, that I don't have to have my munching at night. It's a freaking win. I get in my bed and I have a smile like a toddler who just get his first Christmas gift.
Yeah.
Because there's a breakthrough there. And for whoever is going through that kind of walk in the park, which is not a walk in the park. Enjoy your breakthrough, because whenever you get to your goal, doesn't matter how long it's going to take, you're going to look into the next challenge because
Yeah.
you're going to be hungry for it. And there's an hunger, and this is the utter beauty and happiness in it is when you eat that desire. When you eat that desire to, okay, I did this one. If I'm capable to do this one, I want to go to the next level. What is the next level? What is the next build up I have to do? And we have the same. We're looking at this podcast, right? We started to do our own, you and I talking, very basic, and then we had the first guest who got us speechless, and then we got another one where honestly I had no clue that we would have as guests. Like it was a total new thing, and we talked about that.
Yep.
And then we got one last week where we both broke down into the podcast. And if you don't watch it on YouTube, you won't see us cry, but we both tear up during it. And that's kind of a next level. As much as we tear down, it was joy.
Yeah.
And that specific one, there was a joy to see that. As same as the first guest who got us speechless, there was a joy how he explained his point of view, and there was a beauty that we both look into that said person, because there's not millions of those person in the world who are ready to develop themselves as far as he did. As same as a good example, the person who turned on their life if they're in a criminal life to a straight life, right? And so on and so forth. There's magical thing, and sometimes we don't see the amount of work that has taken them, and sadly people judge when we don't know what they've been through, right? You're 75 pounds, it's 75 pounds, all right, it's a lot of weight, I get that, but what brought you to 75 pounds on top? Suffering, right? And avoiding and disregarding what was going on with your own health, and I could keep on going, right? Which some people will not go through. Some people will go through their entire life, right? I recently mentally realized, why do I shed more weight than I always shed? And I was listening to Eric Thomas again, and he's like, if you're tired of failing, stop quitting. And I was like, this is awesome. This is what I've been doing my entire life into fitness world. And then I will stop because I know we're at 2 hours, but I always worked out. And when I got to a certain level of physique that I like, I was like, okay, I'm good. I'll keep going, but intermittent. And then it went down. The only time I accessed that level of fitness that I wanted, I give it all, right?
The only way to do it. It's the only way you can, right?
And it's everywhere the same. You want to build a business, give your all, right? I mean, we have in our community guys who start businesses, and they're freaking stunning. I find that amazing to see how they grow, and they grow big, and they're known. But although if we look at it from my perspective, oh God, like maybe he's just showing up to trade show or whatever that is. The truth is well, that's, and I'm talking about Corey of Mad Hatter. I'm freaking amazed of his business skill, of how he deals with it. I would love to have his skills rewired differently, his dedication and so on. The guy every weekend goes to markets or shows and whatnot. He does his own T-shirt. I don't do that. I mean, but it's hours dedicated upon hours, and it shows for him. It shows for the business, not for him, but I mean, it shows via the business. But sweat, tears, pain pays off, because sitting on your ass and watching Netflix will not.
That's true.
So this is the beauty.
I'll try and finalize it here.
Go ahead. I love you. There you go.
I love you too, brother. If I may be so bold, I think that men need struggle in their life to be happy. And the greatest struggle that a man can pursue is the pursuit of excellence within himself. And since I've been on that path, I have had better happiness in my life than ever before. And yet the path has been the most challenging. So the challenge to the men who may have listened this far is to accept the challenge and try to become the most excellent man that you can be. And therein is where your happiness lies.
Amen.
And join us. Like and share and subscribe.
And if you have
We'll
any
see ya.
question, wait. If you have question, comments, please share it.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
We're gonna answer everything we have. I mean, that's why we're doing it. We're
Absolutely.
enjoying talking, but we want to share with you and we want to interact with you. So please, if you find that another subject should be talked about, put it in comments.
Yeah.
We'll be more willing to visit it.
And we'll see you next time on the Raven Chronicles with Muninn and Huginn.
Yes. Have a good one.
Peace.